Today on the 4th and 40 podcast, we welcome on former New York Jets scout, Daniel Kelly. How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm doing really well, Zach and Michael. Thank you. And Mark, thank you for having me on your show today. It's really cool. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Daniel has a new book coming out. I'll let him tell you guys about it. And he wanted to come on here, talk about it a little. And we wanted to have him on and talk about what it was like being a scout, where he came from. He actually has a really interesting story. So to get started, just go ahead and start from the beginning, how it happened, where you came from, and just how you got to be a New York Jets scout.
It was a process, Zach. I grew up in Minnesota, and everybody says, why not the Vikings? Well, when I was 8 years old, this is going back 38 years, my parents had a playoff game on, an old television set in the corner of the room, and they were cheering for the Vikings. I looked, I did double take, and my eyes went right through, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the Washington Redskins. It was like a magnet from your refrigerator. I mean, I can't explain other than that. I mean, it was like when a man meets a woman, or one of those type of things, because it was like RFK Stadium, Joe Gibbs, the Hogs, Riggins, the fans. I mean, if you guys remember, you know how the stands used to shake at RFK Stadium, right? You've seen like the videos from back then. We want cows, we want cows. It's like shaking. It was incredible. And then of course the Redskins a couple years later. They win the Super Bowl, the 4th-and-1, play with John Riggins. We all remember that. I was like a little kid with pajamas on, with the little Redskins, like a red T-shirt with a 44 screen print on the back and front. My grandma got me. It said Riggins on the back. Kind of like Ken Snyder, how he has a little jersey. You guys have ever seen this? Is Danny Boy and Sonny Jurgensen's number? Well, that was me with Riggins.
And here, it sounds like your childhood Redskins memories are better than a lot of Redskins fans' childhood memories are right now, for sure.
Yeah, that's part of the advantage of being an old man.
Yeah.
So essentially, just getting your love for the Redskins is kind of what catapulted your love for football. Essentially,
absolutely.
kind of.
It was, yeah, absolutely, Michael. It was love at first sight. I ate, breathed, and slept Redskins football. Couldn't get enough of it. My bedroom was a Redskins shrine. I had posters, pendants, things all over my bedroom. That really did, to your point, that passion I had, that I'm so passionate for football that I had, that I grew up with, was something that I wanted to be in the NFL. And so I gave, I could never pass for 130 pounds, no matter how many large pizzas I ate. So playing linebacker at Penn State was not an option. And but for my 17th birthday, my parents gave me a book. And back then, guys, there was no like internet. I mean, we used corded phones. I mean, we're going way back, right? And there was nothing out there about being an NFL scout. Well, my parents gave me a book for my 17th birthday called Secrets of the NFL Scout, written by Tony Rizzano, who's the old scouting director with the San Francisco 49ers dynasty back in the 80s under Bill Walsh. And I couldn't put it down. I said, this is what I want to be. I want to be an NFL scout. I started telling all the kids in school, I said, I'm going to be an NFL scout. My parents, anyone who listened, I said, I'm going to be an NFL scout. And I started recording games. And I sent reports. I actually made a 75-page draft report in 1992 for the Washington Redskins. I sent to the general manager at the time, Charlie Cashley, who responded and said, "Hey, you're still too young. Cut back up your next year."
I think we got to stop just for a second. I think your audio is cutting out a little bit. Maybe I can hear you, but it's kind of fading a little bit.
Pick up your phone.
Just kind of. I think are you using your laptop?
I'm using my laptop.
I think what happens is when you kind of lean back, it kind of fades out a little bit, and then and like just kind of when you're leaning forward, it's more clear. We can cut this out too, by the way, so it won't come out in the final interview part of the interview. But I think just make sure you're leaning forward, and that's where your audio won't cut out, because it was good at like the first couple minutes, and it kind of faded a little bit the last couple.
Okay, where do you want me to pick it up?
When you got the book.
Yeah, right when you got the book would be a good spot to pick it up.
Okay. So I got this book, right? It was Rizzano's Secrets of NFL Scout, and I couldn't put it down. I said, "This is what I want to be. I want to be an NFL scout." So I started recording games, and I made a 75-page scouting report. My first one, 1992. If we all remember when Desmond Howard did that pose way back in the day, and I said, this is essentially. And Castley responded and said, "Hey, listen, you're still a little too young. Check back after your first year of college. Maybe we can do something then." But my passion catapulted right into scouting. I said, "This is what I want to be. I want to be an NFL scout." I never looked back.
So what was the appeal for it then? Just was it the book that kind of sparked the passion, or did you already Like what took you from just loving football and loving watching the game to actually loving the process of breaking down film and breaking down all the kind of nuances, the schemes that go on within a football game? Tell me about that kind of transformation a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. It just kind of fit into that, if you will. I kind of really loved strategy at that point. When I was 17 years old, I actually designed a play and sent it to head coach Joe Gibbs at the time. And he actually used my play to work for a touchdown in a preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons.
What was the play?
Well, it was, you guys remember, being Redskins guys, you guys remember the counter trade, the counter gap with the backside tackle and guard pulling with the counter step to the left. So what it was that was the Redskins, that was Joe Gibbs' bread and butter play. So what I did was I suggested that what we do, because obviously as soon as the safeties and linebackers start seeing that the backside guard and tackle pull, and as soon as they saw that motion with the running back take a step, they always, for years, the safety would come running up, the linebackers would come up. So what I suggested to Coach Gibbs was, let's play action off the counter gap. And so what happened was a drop back, right? Same motion, backside tackle and guard start pulling, running back to the left, came back to the right to take the hand off. And what happened was, instead of handing the ball off, he Sanders backside post, and the safety about 10 yards, shot Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I jumped at a sports bar. I said, "That's my play." And the guy said, "Oh, sure, kid. Sure it is."
Did he ever use it again in the regular season? Did he ever use it again in the regular season?
In the Super Bowl, they used it again, yes. And as a matter of fact, I have a letter in my book from Joe Gibbs thanking me for my play suggestion, whatever it is.
That's really impressive.
That's really cool.
I have envy for you. I've never gotten to see the Redskins have any manner of success, and RFK was already demolished by the time I was born.
That's what makes you guys even better fans than me, because you guys are riding out the hard years.
I
think it's funny though.
They've been at FedEx since I've been born, so I haven't even gotten to see them play at RFK. But I've heard all the war stories from my dad. He used to be a busboy there back in his teenage years.
Wow, you guys are really making me feel old, but it's okay.
And I got a whole room full of old stuff. The Hog Brew, they used to make homemade beer. It's really cool stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I give you guys props, because the last 20 years has been like in a root canal.
Yeah.
I think as a fan, you always want to feel like, oh, am I impacting my team with all the superstitions? But you actually helped your team. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, you don't usually, the fans like, oh, if I sit in this part of the chair, if I wear this shirt.
Oh, I've done all that. I was the kid when I was like 10 years old. I had a Jay Schrader's my favorite Redskins quarterback of all time. I had his poster on my wall. I used to get down on the floor and like pray God that the play was going to turn out to be a touchdown. So I understand all the superstitions, all the if I wear this shirt, or if I get up this way off the bed today, they'll win. And absolutely, I've done all those things.
So talking about your time at the Jets, can you give me some of your most? I mean, what was your most memorable moment with them or time with them?
It had to be the 1998 season, my first year in the league. It was a mountaintop experience, finally getting in the NFL, having the chance to work in pro scouting. We had a star-studded staff. Parcels was there. Belichick was there. We had Eric Mangini, Romeo Cornell, Al Groh. We had, just Dan Henning. We had a star-studded staff. Just to be on that staff, my first season in the NFL, actually at 24 years old, had testicular cancer. I was diagnosed my first month on a job with the Jets. So when I got in there, I had to go through 2 major surgeries. We won the division that year, and I had a chance to go to a playoff game, your points back. And that was really the most defining moment for me at the Jets, because I actually always had wondered my whole life, what would it be like to be part of a team in the playoffs, ride in the team bus to the stadium. I got a chance to go in the police escorted bus to the stadium with the team, and I got a chance to walk right into the tunnel, walk up to he won the divisional against Tom Coughlin's bars, and the confetti's down, and the signs flashing up next AFC Championship game. And that's really the moment it hit me that, wow, I've made it to the NFL, and I'm here. It was just one of those surreal moments for sure.
And before you made it to the NFL, didn't you kind of put together a huge book and a huge guide, and you sent it out to all the teams, right? Like Mike Ditka was impressed with it with the Saints. And tell me more about that and kind of what you had to go through to get that position with the Jets, because I know you worked extremely hard for it. You talk about that, of course, in your story.
Absolutely, Michael. Yeah, that's a big part of it. From the time I barely passed through high school, because I was so focused on football, failed out of a small community college, really kind of went through a lot of hard times, went through a real serious hard breakup. I went through a repossession, had was evicted from my apartment, went through a lot of hard times until I found myself one day working at Bank of America as a loan officer at 24 years old. I'm like, what am I doing here? My dream is to be an NFL scout. It's better to go for it and not get it than to wonder what always could have been, right? Mm-hmm. So I started having all these ideas come in my mind. Listen, I got a little satellite dish. I can stop at Target and buy some pens and paper. I can start recording games, call DirecTV, subscribe to their college football package. I was like, I can do this. I can give myself one last chance to get in the NFL. So that really, Michael and Zach and Mark, what that did was that catapulted me over the next 7 months of working full-time at the bank all day, moonlighting as a scout all night. And then what happened is I sent out 3 copies of a self-published book I did in 1998 NFL draft report to every team in the league. I paid $2,200 to get the book self-published, which is the next 2 paychecks I had. No guarantees. This was my resume, right? I spent another $1,300 in credit to have the books overnighted to every single team in the NFL, one to every head coach, like you talked about with Mike Ditka, one to every general manager, one to every director of player personnel in the National Football League with no guarantees. I pushed all the chips up the table. I went for it. And basically that's in the first, like you're talking about, the Saints were the first team that called me. They said that, the college scouting director at the time, Bruce Harmon down in New Orleans, said, Coach Dick really likes your book, hang tight. We have a scouting position open in the Big Ten in the Midwest, that we talked to you about. And I thought it was the Saints. That fell through later and then ended up with the Jets. But it was incredible because that book literally took everything I had, all my money, all my energy. I was getting 10, 15 hours sleep a week. I was drinking energy drinks all the time, just to stay awake. I just went for it. I said, I've got to put everything into this. I have to know if I can do this. And that's how it happened.
And you for sure got the reward and the fact that you got to work under Parcells, Belichick, Mangini, Romeo Crennel, a lot of the Belichick coaching tree. What do you think? I know Belichick was in defensive coordinator mode and Parcells was running the show. What do you think, just your impression of working under Parcells, being in that building? What are some of the unique qualities that you saw on the inside that maybe something that people don't know about and something that made him so successful?
Well, he had a big saying. First of all, it's like if you guys ever seen the movie The Godfather, right? It was like working in that kind of environment. Bill Parcells, there was a saying around the building. There was Big Bill and Little Bill. Well, Parcells was Big Bill and Belichick was Little Bill. And it was an environment of professionalism. They had a saying around the building, act like you've been there before. So it was a very business-oriented environment. It was a very structured environment, very highly organized environment. And whenever you'd see Bill, Parcells walking down the hallway, it was just fun. Hi Dan, hi coach, that type of thing. It was surreal, to be honest with you, because I'd grown up being a Redskins fan in the '80s. That was the big rivalry back in the that day when I grew up. The Redskins and Giants was the big rivalry. But to actually see Bill Parcells like that up close and personal was surreal. To see Bill Belichick like that was absolutely. I walked right past Bill Belichick before he went into the press conference to announce his resignation from the Jets when he went to New England, and I said hello to him in the hallway.
Wow.
It was really like being like Forrest Gump.
Wait, so that's incredible. And so I want to make sure just everyone catches that. So the day Belichick announced that he was resigning from the Jets, right before the press conference, you walked by him in the hallway.
Yeah, and we literally said hi to each other. He's like, hi, Dan. I was like, hi, coach.
And he had that same business-like kind of mentality to him.
Same thing you see in the press conferences, just the same
Wow.
tone, same. He had a suit and tie on. He walked in, and I walked into Mike Tannenbaum's office, who was my one of my bosses at the time, and we watched it on TV from his office, and of course we all remember when Belichick resigned from the Jets in order to go up to New England. That was the beginning of the Patriots dynasty. So yeah, it was really like a Forrest Gump moment. It was just like, I walked right past that nice man before he resigned from the Jets. It's just, it was surreal. The whole experience was surreal. It really was.
Do you still have contact with any of those guys?
A couple of the guys. My scouting mentor is Lionel Vitale, who is Belichick's most trusted scout for the New England Patriots for the first 3 Super Bowls. Lionel became my mentor when I was working at the Jets. He took me underneath his wing. He and I have spent thousands of hours on the phone over the last 20 years. He's worked with everybody. He was mentored by Ozzie Newsome. He works for the Cowboys now. He has weekly discussions with Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones. He's worked with Tom Dietrich. He's been around the top of the top. As a matter of fact, he was originally drafted by the Redskins himself as a running back by Bobby Beathard back in the mid-'80s. And so I speak with him most of all, but there's a couple other guys I'll occasionally talk to as well for my time in the NFL.
So what are you up to now? Now that you're done scouting, what's going on in your life?
Well, that's a great question. I'm working on the book still. I got the book here, right? Whatever it takes, the true story of a fan making into the NFL. Whatever it takes book.com. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are available online. I've done the book. The book actually was the biggest project. It was my draft book to get into the NFL took 7 months. This took 10 years.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was like piecing together 100. Remember those old jigsaw puzzles as kids? Right?
Yeah.
it was like 100,000 piece jigsaw puzzle putting this thing together. I went through 130 revised manuscripts. I get 90 words a minute thanks to the Jets because I had to do all the information input in the computer system. But it still took me 10 years to write that book. So I wrote the book. I've done some preaching at different churches, sharing my story around. I've been on all sorts of different radio shows around the country, around the world. And I had a chance in 2006. I was out of the NFL in 2002. In 2006, I almost became the assistant pro director with the Arizona Cardinals. I fell through at the last second. 2012, I came face-to-face with Andy Reid when he was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles at the NFL Scouting Combine. He and I hit it off. I almost got hired by the Eagles in 2012. 2017, I had a very vivid dream that I was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. And it was just you and I sitting here, it's all of us speaking right now. And I woke up and the Holy Spirit said to me, send a card to Jimmy Haslem, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, and tell him you can put together a Hall of Fame staff within 3 weeks if given the opportunity, and send him a copy of your book. My wife, Samantha, well, guess what? The Lord said to me, and she said, well, we better do it. So I put the card together, put the book together, sent the book, whatever it takes, the whole thing off to Jimmy Haslem, the owner of the Browns. 3 weeks later, he responded.
Wow.
And he said, and it was on his personal stationery, and it said on there, thank you so much, Daniel, for your copy of your book, whatever it takes. Please know the Cleveland Browns are doing everything they can to field a championship team. And if you have the time, please write down your ideas. I would love to take a look at them. Sincerely, Jimmy, hand signed in pen.
That's really cool. And he certainly needs them.
Absolutely.
At that time, especially.
Absolutely. So that turned into the next 7 months, me putting together a 166-page revolutionary, like a proposal the outline that could win the Super Bowl for the Cleveland Browns. It was all chock full. And I told Jimmy Haslem, I said, of the proposal, I said, one of two things is true. Either I'm utterly and clinically insane, or I'm about to put together the greatest dynasty in the history of the National Football. It's up to you to the pages of time. So I put that proposal together, right? And of course, I have the background there about Belicheck and Parcels and Gibbs, because Bill Gibbs used to send me letters all the time when I was a kid. Charlie Castley sent me letters. I mean, I had the background, Andy Reid, all this different stuff in there. And so I took a step further, because one of my ideas in my proposal to the Cleveland Browns was we were going to have a team that did not have a punter. We were going to go for it at every single fourth down there is.
Hey, I love that. Fourth and 40 podcast.
We love that mantra.
I love that.
Yeah, we love that idea.
All right.
So that's actually really fascinating, sir. You talk about going for it every time. Are you kind of an analytics guy, or are you kind of more of an old school scout?
Both. Well, it's interesting you asked that question, Michael, because people ask me, who would have been your head coach for the Cleveland Browns had you got the job to be the GM? And my answer will surprise maybe some people, because I said Kevin Kelly. Do you guys know who I'm talking about?
I got to be honest, I don't.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's kind of like when Bobby Beathard, who's my hero of being a general manager in the NFL, the Redskins' old GM, when he walked into Jack Kent Cook's office and suggested Joe Gibbs, the old man, Mr. Cook at the time, said, Joe who? Joe Gibbs, we know who that is now, right? So no, but Kevin Kelly, guys, okay, is if you look him up, he's a high school football coach. He's the most aggressive coach in America.
I think I know who you're talking about. He's down in Florida.
Arkansas, right?
Arkansas.
Yeah, okay. Yep. He's the most aggressive because in order to beat Bill Belichick, you have to be more aggressive than Bill Belichick. And this guy is. As a matter of fact, Belichick flies this guy up to New England every year to talk to him. And so he's friends with Bill Belichick. He's friends with Scott Pioli, my old boss, who's Parcells' father-in-law, or son-in-law, actually, rather. And so I wanted Kevin Kelly. Now, the answer, Michael, he's got the analytics down to a science. He has everything charted, what the advantages are. He has it all statistically mapped out about, the advantages of not punting. Plus, he does onside kicks every single kickoff. And now he's starting to incorporate rugby-style football into his program. Kevin Kelly's won 7 state championships in the high school level. He's been on HBO. He's been in all over America on the internet. He's the most aggressive coach in America, and aggression wins. Guys with that level of aggression, that level of belief, that level of confidence, and that level of faith will win. So I told Jimmy Haslem, I said, this is who I want as our head coach.
So he's definitely someone to watch, though, in the future. Because I'm sure, of course, Jimmy Haslam's not going to hire a high school guy, but it sounds like he's someone to watch based on what you're describing and how much success he's had and how aggressive he is as NFL front offices become more progressive and more open to analytics and going for it and everything else. So that's pretty cool.
Well, Cleveland's kind of shifted that route. Their front office is heavily
That's
analytics-based now.
It's interesting because when I had that dream, I didn't know Jimmy Haslem. That's a great point, Mark. Jimmy Haslem, was doing that whole Moneyball thing and everything back then. So that even led even more credence to your point about that, where the analytics may come into play very heavily. And Kevin Kelly is all about analytics.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, I wanted to get your take on what you think the Redskins' current roster is like from an unbiased perspective. Do you think we're looking to go in the right direction here?
That's a great question, Mark. We got a lot of question marks on our roster. I think Ron Rivera brings us a discipline that we haven't had. So I think, much like Matt Patricia brought to Detroit Lions, a very tough, disciplined team, I think we'll see that same hard-nosed type of football in Washington develop. I think we have some talent. We obviously, Terry McLaurin, I love him. I love Landon Collins at safety. I think our defensive line is shaping up rather nicely. Linebackers are a big question mark for me. Corners are a big question mark for me. The offensive line is a question for me. And I'm really kind of curious. And the biggest question mark on the entire roster to me as an NFL guy is Dwayne Haskins. This is a guy that I know that Dan Snyder absolutely loves. He's got the big arm, and I don't know how you guys feel about him, but just you're asking, he's got the big arm, he's got the size. But in my 38 years of watching the Washington Redskins guys and watching the NFL, he is the most immature quarterback I have ever seen in my life. And I think that's going to be a serious problem. Even his college coach, Urban Meyer, came on and said, hey, you got to cut the social media. You got to cut some of these things back. And to me, and I saw something that was alarming last year. I saw him on the – I hope you guys remember, they showed him on the sidelines. He was trying to talk up to his offensive line, and they just clearly ignored him. So I wonder, how that's going to develop with Haskins. And of course, as the quarterback goes, so goes the team. So I think we got some good things going. And it's funny because one of my inside sources in the NFL told me point blank, a guy who's a director in the National Football League told me, he said, there's no way Ron Rivera is going to go with Haskins as a quarterback. Well, he
really?
Yeah, absolutely. He wanted a veteran guy. He wanted somebody he could depend on and trust. But in order to get the deal, he had to basically, Snyder said, Haskins is my guy. And we remember how much Daniel Snyder wanted Haskins to begin with the draft. So
Snyder's still going to get his way.
For
sure.
That's kind of surprising because Ron Rivera could have probably gotten any job in the NFL he wanted. I'm kind of surprised he chose Washington if he had to go with Haskins, if that's not what he wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was told that basically from my source that he had to go with Haskins if he wanted the job.
Well, I'm sure Haskins being a young cat kind of made it better for Rivera as if he was immature and old. I mean, you can still try to form him. You can still try to change his ways while he's young. I mean,
sure.
I don't know if you listened to the podcast, but we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. We really got into the whole social media thing.
And with Haskins specifically.
Haskins was pretty much the front runner of that with all the videos that come out of him working out and everything. And then next, it's funny you say the discipline in Washington because we just had an NBC Sports Washington writer on, and he talked about how with Jay Gruden, it was obvious there was no discipline. There was a lot of lack of discipline in the room. Not a lot of people respected him like he should have been. And now you get a guy like Ron Rivera, and I think everyone sees the positive direction Ron Rivera will take the organization in. It's whether or not Dan Snyder will let him run the organization, and it's whether or not, I think Dwayne Haskins is the biggest question mark. And if he does come out and play well, if he does mature, if he does become a better QB, which he did lose the weight, which was one of my big question marks, was can he lose the weight? Can he gain a little bit of mobility? He did that in the offseason, and now it's time to see if he can shut up and play. I mean, that's really the question I have. We'll see.
Absolutely, a great point, Zach. And I had a privilege of riding an airplane next to Lee Steinberg, who's the best sports agent in NFL history, in a lot of people's opinion. Back from Mobile, I went to the Senior Bowl back in 2012. I rode from Mobile back to Houston. And back when I was a kid, this is going way back to the time that I covered wagons. Just kidding. But back when I was a kid, all the first round draft choices, all the quarterbacks had Lee Steinberg around them in the ESPN rooms and stuff. And Lee's worked with a lot of the best quarterbacks. He's working with Mahomes now. And he told me point blank, he said, quarterbacks are like a fine wine. They take time to develop. He says, unfortunately, a lot of times teams don't have the patience or the time to work with these guys. And so, Haskins may be a guy that, it's going to take a few years, and the jury's out if he's going to have a few years in Washington, or if they're going to have a few years to work with him like that, especially if the Redskins have a high draft choice next year. It'll be interesting to see what Ron Rivera does after he says, okay, Mr. Snyder, I worked with your guy for a year. Now maybe we should go a different direction.
And especially with how bad the Redskins' offensive line is, and how, they don't even have any relevant good tight ends. That's two things for a young quarterback. Whether you think Haskins is good or not, he's going to, by default, struggle because of that. You can't get around that.
Great point.
But I wanted to ask you too, since you're a Redskins fan who remembers the glory days. So I'm sure this name change makes you sad as a fan. Maybe talk about that a little bit, what the name means to you, and is it going to diminish your interest a little bit? Is it going to make it harder to watch? Are you fully against it? I kind of assume you are, just as an older fan. It's just you remember those good old days.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. You guys have great questions on the show. It was heartbreaking to me. The morning the name change was announced, I literally cried.
Wow.
My wife held me. I cried. It was like a death in the family to me. I'd always said as a kid growing up that rain or shine, I've been through a lot of stuff in my life. I've lost a lot, gone through a lot of things. I was a guy that always said, I don't care if I get fired from a job or this happens. I always have the Washington Redskins on Sundays. So it was very, very difficult. You're talking to someone who has bled burgundy and gold for 38 years. I was such a Redskins fanatic that even a paycheck can sway me. Back when I worked at the Jets, everybody in the building knew I loved the Washington Redskins. I can't even tell you how many times Greg called me in his office and said, hey, listen, you got to put me a fan of the Washington Redskins. I said, my passion is not for sale, is what I told him. So to have the name change like that, I write for Rico's Rag. I don't know if you guys have seen me on there, but I actually submitted an article a few days before the name change. And I basically said, we don't need to do this. Daniel Snyder is a marketing genius. We can find other sponsors. It doesn't care. Target, Walmart, Amazon, FedEx. Who cares? Let's call UPS on line 2. Who cares? We can do this. And I offered Mr. Snyder to come in there, be his general manager, the hits and take the bullets and basically get this thing on the right track, because I don't think it has anything to do with taking down statues or changing names, or it's a mindset.
I totally agree. 100% agree with that. It is because the same Washington Post reporters who want to change the name are in favor of changing everything else. There was an article in the Post a week after they changed the Redskins name about the Texas Rangers. And I think exactly what you said. Is it about the Redskins name specifically, or a larger movement in our society? For sure.
It's a larger, to your point, Michael, great point. It's a larger movement, because as you look around the country right now, this is like dominoes. After we got done with the Redskins, to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we're at the Cleveland Indians, we're at the Edmonton Eskimos, we're one after another. And there's a larger agenda. Listen, guys, for 30 years of my 38 years of following the Washington Redskins, they've been after them to change the name. At 13 years old, this is going way back, I wrote an article, an editorial in the Minneapolis Star and Tribune that said, if saying hail to the Redskins is not the ultimate compliment to a race of people, what is? I remember I went to Super Bowl 26 on January 26, 1992 at the Metrodome when we beat Buffalo. I walked in with war paint on my face, my Redskins hat, my Mark Rippon jersey, Redskins Zubas, if you remember those pants. You've ever seen those things, those awful looking things? I walked in, a big foam hand, and there was this guy named Clyde Bellecourt, who was one of the initial guys that started, change, inside the place. And I mean, I've been going through this for 30 years. So I was very disappointed. I felt like it was a knee-jerk reaction. I was in favor of it. And I think we're just going to see, erase Justin Marshall from the team's history is absolutely, positively insane to me. This is the guy who brought the Redskins to where they're at. And I mean, just take down all this. It's not going to solve the problem. That's not the problem. It's a perception problem. The only thing that divides us as an American is a perception. We think these things divide us, but they're really just perception.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on. I want to give you one more chance to shout out the book. I'm going to read it. I'm going to try to get myself a copy, so you can go ahead and shout it out one more time so everyone can hear it and figure out where to get it.
Cool, absolutely. It's there I am with in front of the Super Bowl III trophy from the Jets when they won the Super Bowl at the Jets facility. It's called Whatever It Takes. It's the true story of a fan making it into the NFL. My book website to talk more about the book background is whateverittakesbook.com. It's available online at Amazon, 11 different countries. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's online anywhere where books are sold. And, I just pray that inspires you and whoever reads it to your dreams, because one thing I can tell you is dreams can't come true, and impossible is just a word in the dictionary. Anything is possible. A lot of times the only thing that limits us is our mindset.
That's really good. And we really enjoyed this interview. This was really interesting. Gave us a lot of insight that we've never had before. It's really cool to hear talk to an old Redskins fan. My dad's one, Mark's dad's one, but it's cool to always get a different perspective, and the perspective you come from being inside football, being around it, obviously being with Bill Parcels. This was really cool. And we want to thank you for coming on. And for everyone, this will probably be the last thing you hear this week, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you, guys.